The fate of the suspended executive order signed by United States President Donald Trump, temporarily banning refugees and the citizens of 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the U.S., could be decided by an appeals court as early as later on Monday.
A Seattle-based federal judge on Friday issued a nationwide temporary restraining order blocking the executive action, which was immediately appealed by the Justice Department. By late afternoon deadline, the government must defend the order in the 9th U.S. Circuit of Appeals in San Francisco after the court refused over the weekend to block the lower judge's decision suspending its implementation.
The government has until 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday or around 1 a.m. Central African Time Tuesday to submit additional legal explanations, or what they call briefs, to justify the controversial ban that created chaos around the nation's airports, even for travelers with valid legal entry permits into the United States. Washington State on the West Coast became the first state to challenge the constitutionality of the executive order and won a significant reprieve in Seattle on Friday.
It's obviously a historic decision and an important one for the rule of law and for the people of the state of Washington and the people of our country. I said from the beginning, it is not the loudest voice that prevails in a courtroom. It's the Constitution. And that's what we heard from Judge Robart today.
Support for the Washington filing now includes the states of Hawaii and Minnesota and close to 100 technology companies, among them Apple, Facebook, Google and Microsoft, who filed briefs arguing that the executive order harms innovation and economic growth. But in true form, President Trump took to Twitter referring to the so-called judge in Seattle, and in another tweet warned that if anything happened, the judge and the court system should be blamed.
In his authority as president.
This was his vice president speaking on NBC's Meet the Press, who defended the president's direct criticism of a sitting federal judge.
I think people find it very refreshing that they not only understand this president's mind, but they understand how he feels about things. He expresses himself in a unique way. And again, the judge's actions, look, the judge's actions in this case in Washington, which are at odds with a federal district court judge in Boston who upheld the constitutionality of the president's actions, the judge's actions in this case, making decisions about American foreign policy and national security, it's just very frustrating to the president, to our whole administration, to millions of Americans.
A Boston judge did side with the Trump administration in rejecting a civil rights claim that the executive order represented religious discrimination. Meanwhile, several former foreign policy officials, including former secretaries of state John Kerry, Condoleezza Rice and Madeleine Albright, have filed declarations against the executive order because they believe the ban serves no national security purpose. And so, while it's unclear which way rulings might go in the short term, what is more certain is that these various legal arguments will likely end up in the Supreme Court for a final decision. Sherman Briceby's SABC News, New York.